After being a very well-respected member of the GNOME community, a very talented developer, and voted into the Foundation Board of Directors, instrumental in much of the Sovereign Tech Fund work, about a year ago, Sonny Piers was removed from the GNOME Foundation Board of Directors, simply citing a code of conduct complaint was made against Sonny Piers, and that's pretty much the extent of what is publicly known. Now, Sonny has not really spoken much on the matter, and I can understand why. They want to keep it private. He probably wants to keep it private. I don't know if there's anything between them about why he can't speak, but it seems like he frankly just wants to move on with the rest of his life, and honestly, I can't blame him. Pretty much all he has said is in this blog post here about a year ago, just talking about his time as a director, talking about his time working in GNOME, and just, generally being quite positive and, again, wanting to move on with the rest of his life. Now, earlier this year, another member, Tobias Bernard, stepped down from handling the Sovereign Tech Fund application for 2025, handing that over to Adrian Vovk. The reason why I bring this up is just a few hours ago, as a recording of this, Tobias published a new blog post, The Elephant in the Room, addressing what happened in the Sonny situation. Now, the last time I talked about Sonny, I had some ideas which I'd spoken to people and read some things, and turns out I was wrong about those, so I'm not going to bring those up again, but we don't really know what happened to Sonny, and Tobias doesn't really clear the air on what happened here, but he does provide some insight into how we wound up in this situation. In a few weeks, it'll be 1 year since a board member of the GNOME Foundation was disappeared under very suspicious circumstances. I've seen someone complain about this specific phrasing, but frankly, that is a very apt comparison to what happened in this situation. He was just removed, nothing was said about it, everyone just moved on, and we just don't talk about it anymore. The intentions behind keeping everything internal were good. The hope was to get a resolution without unnecessary conflict. And I can understand this. But at the same time, it allows the absolute, we'll just say psychos, to run wild with whatever idea they can come up with. I've seen people say things that are like, oh, he did something criminal, something violent, just things that have absolutely no evidence. They just say random things because, I don't know, they want an explanation. At least in my case, when I was wrong, I was misled by some connections I saw, some discussions I had, and after I had further discussions, I admitted I was wrong. Some people are still running wild with this. However, because there's no non-public way to have discussions across the entire community, and with this dragging on longer and longer, what I've seen is partial facts and misunderstandings spreading across different subgroups, making it harder to talk to each other. I'm now convinced it's better to break the silence and start having this conversation across the project, rather than letting the conflict continue to fester in the background. Even if you were going to say, oh, only GNOME Foundation members can be in this chat room, anything that happens in there is going to be leaked. It is very, very easy to join the GNOME Foundation and just post everything that happens. So it's better to assume that every discussion had is effectively public. Over the past year, a number of people from the community, including Tobias and some members of the board, have tried to resolve this behind the scenes. On a personal level, I'd like to thank all the board members involved for their efforts. Even if we didn't always see eye to eye, medium term, I'm hopeful that some positive policy changes can be made as a result of this process. One important thing to note is that nobody involved is against codes of conduct. The problem here is the Foundation's structural dysfunction, bad leadership, and the way the COC was used in this case as a result. Now, I have my own thoughts on the GNOME COC, on the way COC are used across various different projects, but I'll save that for another video. Now, as I said, Sonny's been gone for a while, wants to, move on with his life, totally understandable. But the rest of us are still here, and we still need to work together. For that, if not justice, we need at least closure and a way forward. A way to end this chapter and no longer continue fighting about it. And honestly, I totally get Sonny just kind of stepping back and going and doing other things, because if you've gone through all the avenues you have, if people that support you can't make any change, at some point you just have to say, it is what it is, There's no point stressing about things you can no longer change. In this case, someone was disappeared entirely from the community with no recourse, no attempts to de-escalate, and no process for reintegration, and no communication to the rest of the project, not until months later anyway. And even then, the communication was basically, hey, Sonny was removed, this happened. That is all. That is all we will say. And considering this phrasing, no process for reintegration, I think it's fair to say the ban is at least being treated as permanent, or the COC committee at least can't come to a conclusion about whether or not they should reopen a path. Now, one thing not often discussed is what it means to actually be banned from GNOME. Obviously, he was removed from the board, but that's not the only thing. You are banned from GitLab, Matrix, Discourse, in-person events, and more. I can't comment on this, but it does appear that all of these are banned. Your accounts get locked. Since many people, including Sonny, have their GNOME accounts, for example Matrix, as their main ones, this is equal to shutting them off from all open source software development, and all social connections related to it, if not more. I couldn't reach him anymore. In fact, there wasn't any conversation between us since. I know he does have a personal Mastodon account, because I don't believe GNOME runs a Mastodon instance. Correct me if I'm wrong there. And I know now he does have separate replacements to all of those as well. At least, well, the Discourse is the GNOME Discourse, so obviously not that one, but he has a different GitLab. I wonder how you would feel in that situation. Sonny was extremely passionate about GNOME. He mentored multiple GSOC students in GNOME. He became a board member, which is a lot of work. He launched the SDF project in GNOME by himself, even before getting on the board. He was a founder of the Berlin community and organizer of all its events. There were ideas on a future GUADEC or LAS in Berlin. Now suddenly you're out, you'll never be able to do all of it again. I ask, who deserves that really? Who deserves a permanent GNOME-wide ban? Other than obvious trolls, I have a very hard time imagining what might need to be done to achieve that. It really seems like someone wanted to get rid of Sonny, get rid of him forever, to never come back and make trouble again. And there was total ignorance of all of that destruction. All the burned bridges lost trust and health of the project, as well as the development and fundraising effort through SDF. Albeit with not much, but some, in the way of additional details, this is the process of what happened. A first-time COC complaint was met with an immediate ban, which is a wild response to a first complaint. Second, third, makes sense, get rid of him. First time complaint though. A week later, the ban was suspended and a mediation promised. So, a week later there was a discussion, and I guess there was a discussion about whether there should be a discussion. Yeah, pretty much. The 2024 board elections were held a few weeks later without informing the electorate about the ban, which, you want to talk about what happened with the OSI recently. Would voters vote differently if they knew a ban occurred? I think it's pretty hard to say they wouldn't. Would they vote in favor? Would they vote against? Unclear, depending on the context of the ban. But I think it's pretty much impossible to say that nothing would happen. 2 months later, the ban was reinstated unilaterally against the wishes of the new board. You might say, how is that possible? There is a COC committee and a board. They are two separate entities. Mostly separate entities. We'll get to that in a moment. There was an unsuccessful vote to remove the chairman of the COC committee from the board and COC committee. So here we have the meeting minutes from when that happened. If we go right down to the bottom, we have Pablo's motions. Vote on removing Federico from the Code of Conduct Committee, second by Julian. 2 yes, 4 no. Pablo Correa Gomez voted yes, and Julian Sparber also voted yes. Michael Downey, Karen Sandler, Federico Mena Quintero, the person being voted out, which seems weird that you have voting power in the case of you being voted out, but it's the GNOME Foundation, they're going to do it like they want to do it, and Alan Day voting no. A second vote on starting the process of removing Federico from the board of directors, second by Julian. 2 yes, 4 no. Voting the same way as the first vote here, with Eric Albers and Robert McQueen not being present at the meeting. Now, whether it be Federico or anybody else, do I think you should be able to be on both the board of directors and the Code of Conduct Committee, a committee that has power over the board and has the ability to remove people at the same time. Now, if you ask me, this seems like a wild conflict of interest. I don't care if you want to say, oh, that might be common. Literally doesn't matter. It shouldn't be. That is open for exploit. Given the above, I think it's fair to say that people who were on the board and COC committee when the ban happened have, at the very least, acted with incredible recklessness. The haphazard and intransparent way in which they handled this case, the incoherence of their subsequent actions, and the lack of communication have caused great damage to the project. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there are good people involved in the foundation, in the project. I know people involved in both. Don't get me wrong, right? But I'm not sure how anybody would trust the GNOME Foundation without some sort of public resolution to this situation. I don't know why you would trust anything they say, anything they do, when something like this can happen, and it just basically radio silence. Among other things, in Sonny Piers, they've cost us one of our most prolific developers and organizers, and in the STF development team, our most successful program in recent history. Along with plans to make that STF team somewhat permanent, basically just up in flames. In an alternate world where this had not happened, we could be looking at a very different foundation today with an arm that strategically funds ongoing development and can employ community members. This is one of the things I love about the KDE-EV. Yes, you might have complaints about some of the things they are doing, but they seem to be in a pretty stable state. Recently, one of my friends actually got employed by them, and, like, that's awesome. Having the ability to actually fund the development of the project, more than just funding events and marketing and things like that, but actually funding developers, making it so the community actually has a way to, survive off of open source. That is awesome. More importantly, however, we're now in a situation where large parts of the community do not trust our COC structure because they feel it can be weaponized as part of internal power struggles. The scariest kind of power is not one that is all-powerful. The scariest kind is one that appears to be illogical, appears to be acting randomly, and even in many cases against its own best interest. You don't know who it's going to be applied to, and you don't know why it's going to be applied. How do you handle that? This ban was only the latest in a long series of failures, missteps, and broken promises by the Foundation, in addition to the recent financial problems. So, after being told many times that, oh, it's totally normal, the GNOME Foundation is massively overspending, and that's what a non-profit has to do. They have to get rid of all of the money they have. They had to fire some people. They had to fire some key people of the Foundation. They also have to cut back on funding of events and marketing and graphic design and rely more on community funding for those. And they're doing less in the way of travel compensation, making it harder for people to actually get to events who otherwise would want to go to them. Now, the GNOME events are still happening, and they have not been shut down, but this is a problem that needs to be improved. And operational failures, e.g. not handling internships, repeatedly messing up invoicing, and not responding to time-sensitive communication, linking to this blog post right here. And all strategic initiatives over the past 5 years have either stalled or just never happened, e.g. Flat Hub payments, which I did not know that was from 2019, Local First, and Development Initiative. I think there are structural reasons at the root of many of these issues, but it's also true that much of the Foundation leadership and staff has not changed throughout this period, and that new people joining the board and trying to improve things tend to get frustrated and give up, or in Sonny's case, get banned. This is a problem we need to confront. Now, I don't know if that problem is as bad as he makes it out to be. Let's actually look at the board over the years. So here we have 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025. So you definitely have your long-running incumbents like Robert McQueen, like Federico, who has done a number of terms. He was here at this point, gone at this point, but he did come back later. We have her here for, I think, 2 terms? Yeah. But a lot of people tend to show up, maybe do a term or 2, and then churn out. To those on the board and COC committee who are involved in Sonny's ban, I'm asking you to step down from your positions and take some time off from Foundation politics. I know you effed up, and I know you care about this project like we all do. Whatever your reasons at the time, consider what's best for the project now. Nobody can undo what happened, but in the medium term, I'm actually hopeful that reconciliation is possible and that both the Foundation and community can come out of this stronger than before. I don't think that can happen under the current leadership, though. Now, I might meme on the GNOME project and the GNOME Foundation fairly often, especially if you show up in my streams. It is the butt of many jokes. But a strong GNOME is good for everyone. You want to have competition. You don't want a situation where there is one project and then it just stalls and you have nowhere to go because there's just no competition in the desktop environment space. If you care about Linux, you should want a strong GNOME. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know where this is going to go. Do I think people are going to step down from the board? Look, if I had to guess, I'm probably going to lean towards no. Do I think that we're ever going to find out really what happened here? It's possible someone gets really annoyed at some point and just, you know, burns every bridge and just says what happened. But at least for now, it doesn't seem like that's what's going to happen. But what do you think should happen? If you're a member of the GNOME Foundation or you just use GNOME, I'm very curious to know what your thoughts are on this going on. And if you're a member of the Foundation, I want to know why you're still a member and if you trust the Foundation going forward. I'd just like to know your thoughts. So, if you like the video, go like the video. If you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to the Libero Pay link in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and GNOME away. I think I made that joke before.